Hello everyone and welcome along to the Frankie Sports channel. Just for new viewers here, this is my channel where I discuss different sporting matters in a more holistic way, and yeah, it may be football, tennis, cricket. Those are my three main areas, but right now people, the focus is on the Premier League, and for this specific video I want to discuss which teams outside of the three favourites could be the best place to mount a challenge for the title race. Now, in my head, and according to the bookmakers, the three favourites for the Premier League this season, we've got Manchester City, we've got Arsenal, and we've got Liverpool. So, let's take a look at the other teams that could potentially break out of the pack and challenge this season, because in the early stages, there doesn't appear to be much separating the teams in the top 6 to 8. Certainly not with regards to points, but also performances. And in some ways, some of the emerging teams are actually winning with a little bit more conviction than the teams at the top. For example, Manchester City and Liverpool didn't look 100% convincing in their wins at the weekend, and obviously Arsenal didn't get 3 points at all. Against Chelsea, it was a 2-2 draw. So, team I'm going to start on first is a team that actually won 4-1 at the weekend, and that is Aston Villa. Now, it may appear a little far-fetched to suggest Aston Villa can win the Premier League this year. However, I am noticing some real progress at Villa Park under Unai Emery. They've invested really well in the summer. I think Moussa Diaby has added a lot of guile, intelligence and creativity to their front line, coming in off the right onto his left foot, and combining very well with Ollie Watkins, who is in the form of his life. He's just scoring, assisting, it appears, in every match, and he appears to be relishing the leadership role being placed upon him by Unai Emery. Oftentimes in football, you hear fans talk about the need for competition for places, for that sense of not being 100% sure that you're going to play each week, and that fear driving you to maintain your standards. With Ollie Watkins, I feel it's an example of how a case can work the other way, where if you feel a manager's trusting you to play week in, week out, you can go out there with that sense of confidence and freedom, knowing that your place isn't imminently under threat. And I think Watkins is really enjoying that consistency, that continuity, that trust and sense that he's going to play every week. And we're seeing him firing on all cylinders, people, scoring incredible goals, cutting in onto his right foot, and it was a left foot drive into the roof of the net against West Ham that was so impressive. And you've got those two, and you've got Douglas Luiz, who's also adding a lot of attacking intent and strength from midfield. And you feel as if that area of the pitch, Aston Villa, are also very strong, because they've got John McGinn and Kamara along with Douglas Luiz, and Jacob Ramsey can also come into that mix when he's fit. So they've got quite a few combative, physically strong, box-to-box midfielders who are really dovetailing well with this high-energy, upbeat, high-intensity style that Unai Emery is implementing at Aston Villa. And you add to that a solid back line, Pau Torres, Diego Carlos. You've got solid fullbacks in Matty Cash, Luca Digne, or it may be Moreno when he recovers from his injuries. So you've got a really strong side, and more importantly, a team that looks like it's functioning well and creating opportunities and scoring multiple goals. One question mark I would have about Aston Villa is their ability in their nous to pick up points against the big teams away from home. And we've seen this is where they've struggled so far this season. They've lost heavily at both Newcastle and Liverpool. However, they did pick up 3 points at Stamford Bridge against Chelsea. So let's see if Villa have a quick learning curve, and if they're able to correct that slight flaw, it would appear, in their arsenal moving forward. So Aston Villa is one definite contender, people. Then you have Newcastle. Now, I think Newcastle are also a very strong team, and they're really racking up the goals at an incredible rate of knots. They won 4-0 against Crystal Palace at the weekend, which took me by surprise, and it really made me sit up and take notice, because Crystal Palace's defence has been very mean, very miserly so far this season. And for Newcastle to blitz them in the manner that they did, could have been more, just shows that, yeah, they're serious, and they are very much going from strength to strength and carrying on with the momentum that they started last season. And again, you've got players in there, you've got firepower, people who can score goals, the likes of Isak, Callum Wilson, Anthony Gordon, Almiron. And then you've got players from a deeper position who are also joining into the attacks, people like Guimaraes. You've got Joe Linton. Very strong fullbacks, especially Kieran Trippier. We saw Tino Livramento perform so well against Manchester City in the Carabao Cup. Could he feature a little bit more? You've got the likes of a very strong defence and goalkeeper, Dan Burn, Sven Botman when he's fit, and obviously Nick Pope in goal. So there's very much a well-functioning system, similar to what I said about Aston Villa, and they're scoring a lot of goals. Now, the third team that I really want to mention is Tottenham Hotspur. Now, they are top of the league at the moment on 23 points, 2 points ahead of Manchester City and Arsenal. And it's their best start to a season since 1960-1961 season, when they won the double. Now, this is very impressive, and it's important to applaud Ange Postecoglou and the start he's made at Tottenham, how quickly he has implemented his ideas, his philosophy onto the team, his standards. And you're seeing a really well-drilled, high-energy, switched-on, focused team where everybody understands their specific role on the pitch. And that's testament to the communication skills of Ange Postecoglou and his ability to convey his messages in what he wants his players to do on the pitch. And they're playing an entertaining, attacking brand of football, scoring a lot of goals, looking very dangerous, and they're top of the league, so they have to be taken seriously. So, I've mentioned people, this video is not about the top three in terms of the perceived pecking order, Manchester City, Arsenal, Liverpool. It's more about the pretenders, the teams that are going to potentially spring a surprise this season. And I think those are the three potentially most likely: Aston Villa, Tottenham, Newcastle. No particular order, but I think those three teams are really well placed to mount a challenge. Now, I'm going to talk about a couple more teams. One of them is Chelsea. Now, I mentioned in my other channel, people, go subscribe. Frankie says, sorry, Arsenal Fan Down Under. And that channel, people, keeps you locked and loaded on all of the Arsenal content, for me as a big Arsenal fan. But just to, and as I said on my last video on that channel, Chelsea are a very, very strong side. Really like Pochettino and the style of play he's implementing, the high press from the front, the quick passes and interchanges between Enzo, Caicedo, Gallagher, players coming in from the wide areas, dropping central sometimes going on the outside, the likes of Palmer, Mudryk, Sterling, interchanging in terms of who goes into the box and looks to take the opportunities. It looks like a really well-functioning system, and I only think Chelsea are going to go from strength to strength. So I wouldn't rule them out of a top four challenge. Absolutely not. And then you've got Manchester United. So Manchester United, massive football club, going through a little bit of a trough at the moment. Obviously, there would appear to be somewhat of a recovery going on, winning their last two matches, most impressively, of course, last time out against Sheffield United. Previous to that, Brentford, both by a score of 2-1. But sometimes, people, it doesn't necessarily matter how you get the wins, especially when you're in a bit of a slump in form. As long as you record the W, you move on, you get 3 points, and that's how momentum can build. So I feel like United have an opportunity now to arrest this mini slump that they've been on, and to really push home with a renewed confidence, because they are playing Manchester City next up at home, a fixture that has been relatively kind to them over the years. Certainly they won their last season, and you feel like if they were to beat Man City, who, let's face it, aren't perhaps at the scintillating best at the moment, it could be that catalyst to really kickstart Manchester United's season, especially if they were to win this week in the Champions League to get their European campaign up and running. So, 5 teams there, people, who are knocking on the door of either getting into the Champions League places or potentially gate-crashing the title race. 5 teams I mentioned, people, I'll recap them: Aston Villa, Newcastle, Tottenham, Chelsea and Manchester United. Now, if I was to rank those teams in terms of who I think will finish in what position in relation to those 5, so as I've said, people, excluding Man City, Arsenal and Liverpool, I'm still thinking about it. What I would probably go with is, at this point, Tottenham at the front of that list of 5, Chelsea. Oh, it's tough between Tottenham and Chelsea, actually. You know what? I'm just going to flip that, actually, people. I'm going to say Chelsea at the top of that list of 5, Tottenham second, then Aston Villa. I think Aston Villa might get ahead of Newcastle. Then in the 4th slot, maybe Newcastle. And God, it sounds crazy, but I'm putting United at the bottom of the list, despite the fact that I think they will improve. I just think there is such strong competition out there this season, people. So again, video is not about the top 3 or the perceived top 3. This is about the next group, and within that group of 5, that's the order I'm going with, people: Chelsea, Tottenham, Aston Villa, Newcastle, Manchester United. Now, do you agree, people, with that? And just for the record, I do have the top 3 ahead of those 5. And just for the purposes of clarity, I will give my full top 8. So I'm going to say Arsenal, Man City, Liverpool in whatever order, because this video is not about making a bold statement about the title winners. And then in 4th place, Chelsea. 5th, Tottenham. 6th, Aston Villa. 7th, Newcastle. 8th, Manchester United. All right, people, do you agree? Be interested to hear your comments. Peace. Love.